the people gathered in the square. The great branch lay cracked upon the ground, its wood still smelling fresh, as if it had been alive moments before. The king placed his hand on the trunk. "O great elder," he said, his voice hoarse, "your strength has saved Uwheru again." But Omasiri's gaze was fixed on the edge of the forest. He had seen something in the darkness during the fight, a figure with Kokori's height and bearing, watching the battle but never lifting a weapon. And in the back of his mind, the tree's earlier words rang louder than ever. "They come." The rains has washed away the blood from the battle, but Uwheru still carried the weight of what had happened. The Okpara-Ukodo stood as it always had, towering over the square. Yet to Omasiri, its shadows felt heavier, as though it knew more storm were on the horizon. It was during the yam festival preparation that he first saw the man. The villagers had gathered in the square to dance, drums rolling like distant thunders. When a tall, gaunt figure stepped from the forest path, his wrapper was frayed, his feet bare, his beard unkempt. A long scar ran from his temple to his jaw. Gasp rippled through the crowd. Women pulled their children close. The drummers faltered. "It cannot be," someone whispered. "Ugbevire." Omasiri had heard the name before. 10 seasons ago, Ugbevire had been a respected warrior, known for his strength and cunning. But he had stood accused of killing his brother over an inheritance dispute. The case has been brought before the Okpara-Ukodo, which declared him guilty. The king has spared his life, but banished him from Uwheru forever. Now here he was, standing beneath the tree branches, his eyes blazing. "You all remember me," Ugbevire said, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "And you remember the words of this tree." He spat the words like it was a curse. "It lied. I never killed my brother. I have wandered the lands of the Niger for a decade, and everywhere I go, I hear the same thing. Uwheru bows to a talking trunk instead of his own people." Uwheru rose from his seat, his staff striking the ground. "Your tongue drip poison, Ugbevire. The Okpara-Ukodo speaks the truth of the ancestors." Ugbevire's laugh was bitter. "Then let it speak again, here and now, and tell these people what truly happened." The crowd turned its gaze to the tree. Its branches stirred slightly in the breeze, but no sound came, no deep rumble, no ancestral voice, only silence. A murmur began among the people, a ripple of uncertainty. Omasiri felt the hairs on his neck rise. This was the first time in living memory that Okpara-Ukodo had refused to answer a direct challenge. Ugbevire smiled thinly, as if the silence itself proved his point. "Your great elder has no tongue. Remember that." And with those words, the seed of doubt in Uwheru grew deeper roots. The square was quiet after Ugbevire's outburst, but his words clung to Uwheru like the smell of smoke after a fire. By the next morning, the market women were whispering about it over their basket of dried fish, and the young men at palm shed argued in low voices, some insisting the tree's silence was only a pause, others suggesting it had finally been exposed. Uwheru wasted no time. He summoned the Oto, the council of elders, to the palace hall, a wide open sided structure supported by polished wooden pillars, its roof thatched thick against the rains. Mats were spread in a circle, and a carved stool for the king stood at the head. Chief Ogboma was the first to speak. "My king, it is a dangerous crack in the wall of Uwheru. If the people begin to doubt the Okpara-Ukodo, they will doubt you. The tree's silence in the face of Ugbevire's challenge is troubling." Elder Urhobo tapped his walking stick against the mat. "Troubling, yes, but not damning. The ancestors do not speak for sport. Perhaps the matter is not for the village to hear yet." Another elder, Omadeli, shook his head. Or perhaps the tree's voice is failing. We have leaned on it too long. In the days of our fathers, disputes were settled by men's wisdom, not the whispers of bark and trees. The debate grew heated. Some urged that the tree's sacred ground be sealed until its voice returned. Others argued that to close it off would look like an admission of weakness. Uwheru listened in silence, his chin resting on his hand. At last he spoke. The Okpara-Ukodo had guarded Uwheru for generations. I made a blood oath to protect it. That will not change. But we must be watchful. If doubts grow among the people, it may be as dangerous as a spear from Okpare. The council dispersed with no decision, each elder carrying his own thoughts home. That evening, Omasiri found Adolo at the edge of the sacred grove. The tree's silence, he asked. Does it mean it is in danger? The old priestess' eyes were dark and unreadable. It means, she said softly, that something has reached for its roots. 3 nights after the council meeting, the village lay under a heavy, humid darkness. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the only sound was the distant croaks of frogs by the creeks. Omasiri had been restless, unable to shake Adolo's words about something reaching for the tree's roots. Near midnight, he decided to walk to the square. Moving quietly along the dusty paths, he saw a flicker of movement near the base of Okpara-Ukodo. His heart tightened. He stepped into the shadow of a nearby hut, watching. A figure knelt at the foot of the tree, their wrapper pulled tightly around them. In their hands was a small calabash covered in strange markings that glittered faintly in the darkness. The person poured a thick black liquid into the roots, muttering in a low, urgent chant. The smell hit Omasiri first. Acrid, sour, wrong. It was the scent of burnt herbs and rotten eggs, a stench that clung to the nostrils. He recognized it from Adolo's teaching. Otiri-Igo, a mixture forbidden, used to sever the bonds between the living and the spirit world. His breath caught. Someone was trying to kill the tree. Stop, he shouted, stepping forward. The figure froze, then sprang to their feet. For an instant, the dim light caught their face. It was Chief Ugboma. Before Masiri could reach him, Ugboma darted into the darkness, his footsteps vanishing into the maze of hearts. Omasiri turned to the calabash, its contents still seeping into the earth, hissing faintly as if the roots themselves were resisting. A low tremor shivered through the trunk of Okpara-Ukodo, but no voice came. The leaves above rustled, and one dry leaf spiraled down to land on Omasiri's feet. By dawn, the black stains on the roots were gone, as if swallowed by the earth. But Omasiri knew what he had seen, and though he told Adolo everything, the priestess only shook her head. The shadows, she murmured, now walk in full daylight. The following morning, the air in Uwheru felt heavy, as though the Harmattan haze had returned early. The usual chatter in the market was subdued. The people glanced often toward the sacred grove, as if expecting the tree to speak at any moment. By midday, a commotion broke out. A dispute between 2 fishermen, Uwheru and Okemute, had escalated to the point of calling for Okpara-Ukodo's judgment. It was a simple matter. Whose net had the right to a section of the river bend? The kind of quarrel the tree had settled countless times before. The entire village gathered in the square. The 2 men stood before the great trunk, each stating his claim. Then they stepped back, and the crowd waited. The silence was deafening. The breeze that often stirred the leaves above was absent. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Seconds dragged into minutes. Eyes shifted uneasily. Some people began murmuring prayers under their breath, and others glanced at Uwheru. The king rose from his seat, his voice firm but edged with unease. Okpara-Ukodo, the people of Uwheru await your wisdom. Still nothing, not a whisper, not a faint hum that usually signaled the tree's presence. Omasiri felt a chill crawl up his spine. He stepped closer, placing his palm on the rough bark. The wood was warm, but beneath it there was a strange emptiness, as if the spirit within had retreated far away. "It is tired," Adolo announced suddenly, stepping forward. The voice of Okpara-Ukodo rests. All judgment are suspended until the spirit's return. Gasp rippled through the crowd. Some cried out in disbelief. Others clutched charms to their chests. That evening, the silence became a rumor, and the rumor became fear. Some claimed the ancestors were angry. Others whispered that the tree had finally been poisoned, its spirits fading. In the dark corners of the village, a more dangerous tale began to take root, that without the tree, Uwheru was unprotected, and that the neighboring Okpare might soon strike. The morning after the great silence, Uwheru awoke to a sound few ever wished to hear, the deep, steady beat of a war drum. It came not from their own square, but from beyond the western parts, carrying across the creeks and palm groves like the echo of distant thunder. By the time the sun had climbed over the raffia roofs, a small group of armed men appeared at the village boundary. At their head was a tall, weary figure dressed in a leopard skin sash and carrying a carved staff topped with an eagle's head. His face bore the marks of Okpare, Uwheru's old rival across the river. He stepped a few paces from the gate, planted the staff firmly into the ground. "I am Olotu Ivare, war herald of Okpare," he declared in a voice that carried over the gathered villagers. "I bring words from my Ovie, but I will speak them only before your king." Ovie Roto emerged from the crowd, flanked by Omasiri and two palace guards. The people of Uwheru pressed in close, their eyes darting nervously towards the groups where the Okpara-Ukodo still stood in stubborn silence. "Speak," the Ovie said. Olotu's gaze swept over the crowd before fixing on the king. Okpare had heard the sacred voice of Uwheru is gone. Without its protection, you are like a canoe without a paddle. The river's current will take you wherever it wills, perhaps even to destruction. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers, but Olotu continued. "My Ovie offers you two paths. Pledge your loyalty to Okpare and pay yearly tribute in fish and palm wine, or face the tide when it rises." Adolo stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "Your tide will break upon the shore of our ancestors," she said coldly. "Uwheru's spirit is not easily drowned." Olotu's lips curled into a faint smile. "We shall see. 7 days, that is all." He turned sharply, his warriors following him back towards the western part, the war drums beat resuming as they disappeared into the trees. That night, no one in Uwheru slept easily. The silence of the tree now felt like a wound, open and vulnerable, and the shadow of war loomed heavier than ever. The 7th moon since the Yam festival hung low and red above Uwheru, its reflection shimmering like blood on the slow-moving creek. The village square was nearly empty, save for a handful of elders who whispered to each other in tense voices. In the sacred grove, the Okpara-Ukodo stood in its unyielding silence, a mute giant in the darkness. Adolo knelt at its roots, her forehead pressed to the earth. Before her lay a calabash of palm wine, a gog of river water fetched at midnight, and a small heap of chalk from the sacred white cliff of Ubevi. In the stillness, the sound of her breath seemed to merge with the steady hum of night insects. Omasiri approached quietly, holding a clay lamp. "You should not do this alone," he murmured. "This is not for the many," she replied, her voice low but resolute. "It is for the one who dares to knock on the door of the spirit world when the door is barred." She began drawing intricate patterns on the tree bark with the chalk, her hands moving in a rhythm older than any living memory. Each symbol was a prayer, a call, a reminder to the spirit of the promises it had made to Uwheru centuries ago. From the shadows, Mama Onome, the oldest woman in the village, stepped forward. She carried a small clay pot from which a thin stream of smoke rose, its scent sharp and bitter. The river spirit listened more closely when the air tasted bitter cola and burnt snail shell, she said, setting the pots before the tree. The three of them began to chant. Their voices rose and fell like tides, weaving through the warm night air. At first, nothing happened. Then a shiver ran through the ground beneath them, subtle but unmistakable. The leaves above rustled, though no wind touched them. Adolo's heart leapt. She poured the river water at the base of the trunk. Okpara-Ukodo, she called. Your children await your judgment. Speak and let Uwheru stand unbroken. For a moment the night seemed to hold his breath. Then came a sound, faint, almost like the creak of woods, followed by the whisper so soft it could have been mistaken for the rustle of a bird's wing. But before the words could form, a loud crack split the air. The lamp flickered wildly, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the groove, a man screamed. The scream tore through the stillness like a spear through water. Adolo and Omasiri froze, their chants dying in their lips. Mama Onome's lamp wavered, casting long jagged shadows across the root of Okpara-Ukodo. From the thickets behind the tree, a figure stumbled into view, a man clutching his left leg where blood soaked through torn clothes. His breath came in ragged bursts as he tried to limp away, but before he could escape, two young hunters from Uwheru, Ibiare and Tosan, emerged with spears drawn. We caught him watching, Ibiare said, shoving the man forward. He was hidden in the undergrowth near the groove. The stranger's face was sharp-boned, his cheek marked with parallel scar lines of Okpare. Even in the flickering light, his eyes burned with defiance. Uwheru himself, alerted by the commotion, soon arrived with several warriors. The square moments ago hushed began to fill as villagers emerged from their huts, whispering furiously. Who sent you? The Uwheru demanded, his voice like iron. The spy spat on the ground. Your tree is dead, he sneered. Our Uwheru wanted proof before the tide comes to sweep Uwheru away. A ripple of anger passed through the crowd. Some shouted for immediate death, others urged caution. Mama Onome raised her hands for silence. Even a snake will tell you the truth if you hold it by the tail and speak the right words, she said. Adolo stepped forward, her voice steady. Bind his wounds, but do not free him. He will hear what the tree has to say when he speaks again, and he will carry the truth back to Okpare, whether it is doomed or deliverance. The Uwheru studied her for a long moment, then nodded. He stays. If the Okpara-Ukodo still breathes, let him witness it. If it is gone, let him see our faces when the tide comes. As the spy was taken away under guard, Adolo returned her gaze to the sacred tree. The whisper they had heard moments before still clung to the air, fragile and incomplete. She knew the tree had tried to speak, but something had interrupted it. Something stronger than fear now paused in her heart. They had 7 days, and one had already been lost. The moon was high when Adolo lay down upon a mat of woven raffia, deep in the heart of the sacred grove. Around her, Mama Onome and Omasiri moved in silence, placing charms of cowrie shells and dry leaves in circle. A clay pot of smoldering herbs sent spiral of smoke into the night air, each dendril seeming to twist towards the branches of Okpara-Ukodo, as if guided by unseen hands. This is not sleep as you know it, Mama Onome warned. Her voice carried the weight of decades. Your body will remain here, but your spirit will walk the path only the old ones remember, the path of the dream river. You must go there to seek the root of the tree's silence. Omasiri knelt beside Adolo. And remember, he added, the dream river is not your friend. It gives, but it also takes. Do not drink from it, no matter how thirsty you feel. Adolo closed her eyes as Mama Onome's chanting began. The rhythm slow and deliberate. Each syllable seemed to vibrate in her bones. The ground beneath her body warmed, the air thickened, and soon the chirping of the night insects faded into nothingness. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer in Uwheru. She stood on the bank of a river that shimmered like molten silver beneath a sky without stars. The air was cool, but heavy with the scent of palm wine and fresh earth. Shadows moved along the opposite shore, tall, indistinct figures whose faces she could not see. A canoe appeared, gliding soundlessly across the water. The ferryman was an old man with skin like carved ebony and eyes that glowed faintly. Without a word, he gestured for her to step in. The moment she did, the canoe began to move, though no paddle touched the water. As they drifted, voices rose from the depth, whispering, calling her name. She recognized some as voices of Uwheru's ancestors, but others were strange, heavy with malice. The ferryman spoke at last. The Okpara-Ukodo's roots drink from the drain river. Something has poisoned the water. If you would awaken your tree, you must journey to the place where the river begins and face the one who waits there. The canoe slid into darkness, and Adolo felt the air grow cold. Somewhere ahead, she saw a faint red glow pulsing like the heartbeat of something vast and dangerous. She gripped the side of the canoe, knowing that whatever awaited her at the river's source was not of the living world. The canoe slid silently into a clearing where the dream river began as a single spring, bubbling from the roots of a colossal tree far older than any Adolo had ever seen. Its bark was blackened and split, as if lightning had struck it 1,000 times, yet it still stood. The air here was heavy with a strange energy that pressed against her chest. At the base of the tree sat a figure. At first glance, it seemed human, but as Adolo's eyes adjusted to the dim crimson glow, she saw his skin was carved with the same black bark as the tree itself. Moss hung over his shoulders like a cloak, and his eyes shone a deep, unsettling red. "I know why you have come," the figure said, his voice a low rumble that made the ground tremble beneath them. "The Okpara-Ukodo silence is my doing." Adolo stepped forward cautiously. "Why would you harm a tree that has stood as a bridge between the living and the ancestors for centuries?" The figure tilted his head, and the sound was like wood creaking under strain. "Because bridges invite too many feet. The ancestors had been burdened by endless cries of the living. Petty disputes, selfish demands, they no longer rest. I am the keeper of the source, and I have given them quiet." Adolo's fist tightened at her side. Quiet is not the same as peace. Uwheru is dying without the wisdom of Okpara-Ukodo. You have no right to cut the cords between us. The keeper rose to his full height, towering above her. "If you wish to restore the flow, you must take my burden. You must listen to every cry, every plea, every curse, and carry them until your heart is heavier than stone. Only then will I release my hold." The words chilled her, for she knew what such a task meant. Yet in her mind she saw the faces of her people, the Ovie, Mama Onome, the children who played by the river, and she did not waver. "I accept," she said. The keeper's eye narrowed. "Then drink from the source and bind yourself to it. But once you do, you will never again sleep in peace." Adolo stepped towards the spring, the red glow reflecting in the trembling surface. Her reflection wavered, and for a moment she thought she saw not her own face, but the face of the Okpara-Ukodo itself, whispering her name. She knelt, cupped her hands, and brought the water to her lips. The world shattered into light. The instant the water touched Adolo's tongues, her mind was torn open like a clay pot smashed upon a stone. 1,000 voices surged into her at once, men and women crying for justice, children wailing for lost parents, warriors begging for victory, widows cursing their enemies, farmers pleading for rain. She fell to her knees, clutching her head. The sound was so loud, it was like drums beating inside her skull. Every plea came not only as words, but as sensations. The sting of hunger, the ache of grief, the heat of rage. It was as if she had lived 100 lives in the space of a single breath. Through the chaos, one voice rose above the rest, deep, resonant, and familiar. Adolo. She turned in a vision and saw Okpara-Ukodo, not as a towering tree she knew, but as a giant Urhobo elder. His skin the color of rich earth, his hair the crown of green leaves, his eyes held the sadness of centuries. "My daughter," the spirit said, "you carry the voices now. They will never be silent. But through you the bridge can be restored." Adolo's breath had ragged. Why? Why was the keeper allowed to stop your voice? The spirit sighed, a sound like wind rustling through countless branches. The keeper was once my guardian, sworn to protect the flow between worlds. But over time, bitterness grew in him. He came to see mortals as noisy children who deserve only silence. He poisoned the source to keep their voices from reaching me, thinking it's mercy. Adolo's feet clenched. "Then I will undo what he has done." The Okpara-Ukodo placed a massive hand over her heart. "You cannot fight him with anger, for anger is what bounds him here. You must offer what he has forgotten, understanding. Let him see that the cries of the living are not burdens, but proves that life still stirs in the delta." The vision began to fade, the elder's face dissolving into swelling waters of the source. The keeper's red glow returned, brightened now as he stood waiting at the edge of the spring. "You have drunk," he said, his voice no longer a growl, but tinged with curiosity. "Now show me why I should free the voices again." Adolo rose, the weight of the many voices pressing against her spirit like a flood against a dam. She knew the next word she spoke might decide the fate of Uwheru forever. The clearing around the source was so still that even the waters bubbling seemed to pulse. The keeper loomed above Adolo, his back skin catching the dim red glow, his moss cloak swaying in a wind she could not feel. "You hold the weight now," he said. "Tell me, child of Uwheru, do you not see why I silence them? Endless cries, endless grief. Why let the ancestors suffer this noise?" Adolo straightened, her voice steady, despite the chorus echoing in her mind. "I feel their grief. I feel their rage. It is heavy, heavier than I imagined. But I also feel their love, their hope, their joy when justice is done. These voices are not a curse. They are life itself. Without them, Uwheru would be an empty shell." The keeper's eyes narrowed. Hope fades. Joy dies. Grief remains. "Only if we close our ears," Adolo countered. She stepped forward, meeting his gaze without fear. "You thought you were sparing the ancestors, but in truth, you cut them away from the living. The cries of the people are not chains. They are the threads that bind generations together. You severed that bond." The keeper's moss cloak quivered as though a storm passed through it. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Adolo took another step. You are the keeper of the source. You were not meant to be a jailer, but its guide. Help me bear these voices, and they will not crush us. Together we can make them sing again. Silence stretched between them. The red glow in the keeper's eyes dimmed, replaced by a soft amber light. Slowly he turned to the great spring and knelt beside it. His backed hands touched the water, and the red hue faded, replaced by a clear shimmering blue. A wind rose from nowhere, carrying the scent of fresh rain. Far away, the ground trembled, and in the heart of Uwheru, the Okpara-Ukodo spoke again. Its voice rolled through the village like a great drumbeat, calling names, blessing unions, declaring truths long hidden. People dropped what they were doing, tears streaming down their faces as they heard the sacred words they thought were lost forever. The keeper stood beside Adolo, no longer towering over her, but walking as equal. The bridge is mended, he said quietly. Guard it well. When Adolo returned to the village, the Ovie and elders met her at the foot of the sacred tree. The Okpara-Ukodo leaves rustled in greetings, and though the voices still crowned her mind, they no longer felt like a flood about to drown her. They felt like home. And in the centuries to come, the people of Uwheru told the tales of a day the talking tree spoke again, and of the woman who bore the weight of many voices, so the living and the dead might remain as one.